Grab your loot and shoot some Nazis because we have the latest episode of Westworld. In this video, we're going to take a deep dive into episode 2, uncovering its many Easter eggs, hidden details, and theories about what the heck is really going on. And you'll want to stick around till the very end, as I'll be going over who exactly Enguerrand Serac is and how he may be the key to saving all of humanity. Welcome to Warworld. What we'll later find is a simulation of 1943 Italy. But even though you may think it's a simulation, it appears to be based off an actual Delos park. This is discoverwarworld.com, which says the park is currently undergoing maintenance, so if you're looking to kill Hitler, you may have to wait a bit. The episode begins where we left off in the post-credit scene from episode 1, where Maeve finds this bloodied and bruised German she apparently tortured, judging by the bruises on her fist. She's interrupted by Hector, or in Italian, Ettore, who has a romantic history with Maeve dating back to season 1. He's taken on a new role as a partisan against the occupying fascist forces, but she thinks he's there to help her escape the park. She'll later find that he's simply been reprogrammed into a new narrative called The Führer's Führer, which sees Maeve's British spy character and Hector try to warn the Allies that their upcoming offensive will lead them into a trap. I can't really play the music here, but if you pay close attention, you'll hear a distorted version of the Westworld theme, hinting at the eventual reveal that this isn't reality at all, rather a simulation, but we'll get into that in a bit. Stomping on their way out of this medieval-like town, which was actually shot in Besalú, Spain, Maeve tries to use her Jedi "you will let us pass" powers, which don't work on the Nazi hosts. Another hint that something about this place is a little off, since Maeve in season 2 was able to control the hosts. Her plan B is to literally shove a cyanide pill into a Nazi's face in order to make her escape. Add that to my list of ways to kill a Nazi.
And I want my scalps!
Hector leads her to a vintage MG sports car, a British-made vehicle, which makes sense since Maeve's character here is a British spy. He tells her they'll make their escape via the air, but Maeve realizes he's been reprogrammed after he calls her Isabella, her name in this narrative. There's a fun nod to season 1 when she tells him to hand over the secret plans to the Nazis because, quote, "they're as empty as the safe you used to chase," harkening back to how his character's narrative in Westworld involved him stealing a safe. Hector is shot in the scuffle, leaving Maeve alone to confront the reality that she is in yet another endless loop, so she ends up shooting herself to essentially restart back at the Mesa, where she'll be repaired and hopefully find some answers. Back in the real world, we get another one of these circular divergences which we saw in episode 1. We're in the South China Sea, where Bernard has chartered a boat to take him to the now abandoned Westworld, abandoned because of the massacre which occurred there last season. These circular screens here, I believe, are the work of Rehoboam. We see the same circular feature when Maeve wakes up in Serac's home later in the episode. Serac will find is the other partner that created Rehoboam alongside Liam Dempsey's father years ago. The fact that it says divergence hints that Bernard is taking a path he wasn't meant to take, since Rehoboam is an AI that can choose one's path for them. It's picking up this anomaly. We'll also later find the tablet Maeve uses to hack into the simulation has the same white and black type look and feel to it as these intro screens, providing further proof that Rehoboam, Serac, and these divergent screens are somehow related. We get this beautiful shot of Westworld from a distance, and I'm not going to get into the logistics of how they made this whole thing in the middle of the South China Sea, but knowing how they have these giant terraforming machines, I think the show wants us to extend our disbelief here. Bernard visits the old town which played a role in season 1, and it looks as if everything is burned from the events of season 2, but this was actually caused by California wildfires. Maeve awakens at the Mesa to be repaired when she finds Felix Lutz, who was with her in Shogun World last season. He, however, doesn't seem to recognize her, nor does Sylvester for that matter, which adds up to her suspicion that something is off about this place. Fun fact, Felix and Sylvester are both named after the cartoon cats of the same name. But what really throws Maeve for a loop is the reveal that head of narrative Lee Sizemore, who sacrificed himself last season so she could get away, is still alive. He says he reprogrammed Maeve to be in Warworld because it's closer to the Forge, the place we'll later see them travel to, and that he says can open the portal to the Sublime so that she can be with her daughter. This is really important because it plants the idea in Maeve's mind that she might be able to finally be with her daughter, the thing she wants more than anything. This is likely what Serac will use as leverage to get her to join his side, this promise to reunite the two. Bernard goes to Ford's secret cottage, stopping for a moment at the blood stain of the wall where he killed the head of quality assurance Teresa Cullen in Season 1. In the basement, he finds several broken versions of himself along with a malfunctioning Stubbs who Bernard yet doesn't know is a host. Stubbs was programmed by Ford to cover Bernard's tracks to give him a fighting chance to escape, and with his mission over, he attempted to kill himself by blasting his C6 vertebrae, the explosive put in every host that goes off if they ever leave the island. Bernard tells him that he needs to find Maeve, who may be the only one to stop Dolores. But why would Dolores bring back Bernard if he's only going to get in her way? Bernard theorizes that he may have been brought back because she knows she might go too far and he will act as a counterbalance to that. Something tells me this isn't the real reason, and there's something much deeper at play here. Stubbs tells Bernard he'll take him to Maeve, as Maeve once again wakes up in her loop. She leaves Hector behind this time, who really is hopeless due to his programming, and meets up with Lee, who takes her to the forge. Lee thinks that it was Maeve who operated the cannons last season that opened the Sublime, but we all know that was Dolores. And in a really weird departure from character, he professes his love to her and goes in for a kiss, which Maeve is like,
"What in the hell?"
This kissing scene is a reference to the 1976 sequel to Westworld the movie, Future World, where Delos has been copying the DNA of its guests in order to make clones of them. One of the characters in that film kisses another to determine whether he's a clone or not, just like how Maeve is able to determine that Lee isn't real after she kisses him. In fact, when Maeve calls Lee out as being fake, he can't wrap his head around it, and he starts to malfunction. The screen here turns anamorphic with these black bars at the top and bottom, which was the same style used in Season 2 to depict a simulation. Stubb leads Bernard to a decommissioned Maeve, which was really hard to find clips for the scene since most of them had boobs or wieners, only to find the pearl which contains her data has been taken out. If he's gonna find where she is, he'll need access to a Delos terminal in order to reach the mainframe. In Lee's office, Maeve theorizes that someone is testing her to find out what she knows. The world they're in right now isn't a world at all, it's a simulation within a simulation, and because of that it can be overloaded. Side note, for those keeping track, this is now the second time the notion of a simulation within a simulation has been tossed around, the first time being the party scene in episode 1. And knowing Jonathan Nolan is one of the executive producers, brother of Christopher Nolan, who did Inception, Dream Within a Dream, I'm beginning to think they may be playing with this idea on a broader scale. But back to the simulation being overloaded. After she asks these two employees what the square root of -1 is, the question makes them work their brains so fast that for a brief moment it freezes the simulation. This math question is a reference to one of the biggest unsolved problems in mathematics, the Reimann Hypothesis, which I won't get into or else my brain will explode. If Maeve can recreate this same effect but on a broader scale, perhaps she can find a way out. Stubbs brings Bernard to the medieval world portion of the Mesa, where we get a brief cameo from David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, the executive producers of another little HBO show you may remember, or not want to remember, Game of Thrones. They're playing text, just waiting to be laid off, just like how they got laid off on the new Star Wars trilogy. They make mention that the dragon here, which looks awfully like Drogon, was bought by some startup in Costa Rica, a fun nod to Jurassic Park. Bernard is able to connect to the mainframe, where he experiences flashes of Dolores in the library where data on the park guests were collected by Delos. One of the books has the name Liam Dempsey on it, the same guy who was seduced by Dolores and whose father created Rehoboam. And in one of the wackiest Westworld moments in the entire season, Stubbs is somehow able to fight off multiple armed guards with just a medieval axe. That I can't explain. Maeve wakes up, Groundhog Day style, back in the same loop, but this is all part of her plan. Maeve planted multiple spy papers in all of the Nazi uniforms while up in the Mesa, so that when she'd awaken in the narrative, it would so mess up everyone's processing, so much so that the entire simulation would have no choice but to freeze. She uses the opportunity to infiltrate the network and gain access to the security cameras and drones of the company that's doing this to her. It's interesting to note here that time in the simulation runs faster than in the real world, just like dreams run faster than the real world in Inception. The robot Maeve commandeers was known as Harriet by the production crew and was actually motion captured in Spain. She uses it to retrieve her pearl, which is enclosed in this white casing. Pearls are what Dolores used to smuggle out some of the host's data at the end of Season 2. As the drone makes its escape, you can hear on the intercom a containment breach announcement both in English and Spanish, leading me to believe, since it was also shot there, this is somewhere in Spain. But they might make it Los Angeles for the purposes of the show, since most of the other characters are there. Poor Harriet meets a tragic end, but this isn't the end of Maeve's journey this season, just the beginning. Bernard tells Stubbs that he needs to find Liam Dempsey, who may hold the key in unlocking unlocking this whole mystery. He also programs Stubbs to essentially be his personal bodyguard, so expect them to make it to California fairly soon. Maeve wakes up in Serac's mansion, this guy here. He created Rehoboam along with Liam Dempsey Sr., and it was implied last episode by Dempsey Jr. that Serac was the one responsible for his father's death. Notice how both Maeve and Serac are wearing white. Black and white have been used extensively throughout the series to separate good from evil characters, the Man in Black aka William being one that comes to mind. Contrast their colors to what Dolores wears for much of episode 1, black. The costuming would suggest Serac Maeve good, Dolores bad. Caleb will be caught between this light and dark. Quite literally in the opening sequence of episode 1 we see him straddling this line. Serac tells Maeve that a war is waging that has already been lost, a quite cryptic line that suggests Serac's ownership of Rehoboam has given him insight into the future. But Rehoboam has stopped working. Something is disrupting it, something he initially thought was Maeve, hence the whole simulation ruse. So he tasks her with taking Dolores, the real disruption, out. I mean, what better warrior than someone who was able to change her own code, rewrite her own story, and just took on a bunch of Nazis. He tells her that their interests are aligned, but she takes the opportunity to try and kill him, only to be stopped by this remote control. Remember, he owns her Pearl and likely made a copy of her host body and inserted it into it with the ability to control her functions. With this, and likely a way for her to reunite Maeve with her daughter as incentive, we'll likely see Maeve falling in line to put an end to Dolores for good. Thank you for watching, everyone. Please make sure to like and subscribe, as I'll be doing breakdowns for each episode, and if you want a change of pace and wash out that Game of Thrones cameo, check out my How Game of Thrones Should Have Ended video. I want to hear your thoughts and theories about the show in the comments below, and feel free to follow me on Twitter at ThinkStoryYT. Until next time, remember,
Daddy loves you very much.